So thanks for coming today, guys. So we usually go around the horn and see if anybody's got any updates that they want to talk about, any projects they want to work through. I'm going to turn off the beeps so people stop bothering us as they enter. But I think if we're talking about announcements from the community, did anybody else see what Susie did this week? They bought Rancher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that's a big one this week. I didn't really see any other updates that were of that magnitude.
I have one.
You have one?
Yeah. Did
Let's
you
hear
notice that Istio has now been contributed to its own, it's kind of funny name, user open, but Istio has not been contributed to the CNCF, but it's been open sourced and contributed to its own community.
I did not see that.
Yeah, so something for everyone to check out.
Yeah.
That's big.
That did not come through any of my news filters or anything. Interesting. Because that's a big deal. Because everybody was asking and wondering, is the CNCF going to take over Istio? Is someone who's going to manage it? Things like that. But yeah,
Correct.
That's a big one. So thanks for that. That's another good one.
Sure.
Anybody else have any projects they want to talk about, discuss? Yes, no, maybe so. Anybody hiring or looking for a job? I know Cantino's always hiring
people. Or no, lots of companies that are looking.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we're going to continue our trend of talking about everything cloud. We're going to talk about cloud security automation. And with that, we'll hand it off to the cloud CTO of Prisma Cloud from Palo Alto Networks, Vinay, and I will not do the disrespect of trying to pronounce your last name.
No worries. Thanks a lot, James. Okay, just give me a second while I kick this off.
Okay, yep, and you can screen share. Awesome.
Can you guys see my screen? Just want to confirm.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak here. My name is Vinay Venkataraghavan. I'm the Cloud CTO for Prisma Cloud. And today I'm going to be talking about the cloud security automation stack that we've developed at Palo Alto Networks. And towards the end of, closer to the end of my presentation, I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Andrew Sweet, who's also going to present some very interesting findings from a very broad survey that we did, and we call it the Cloud Native Security Report. So with that.
Hey Vinay, before you get started, sorry to interrupt. Yes. Before you get on your roll, but I wanted to, James, you mentioned usually standard procedures going around the horn. You mind if we do that? Just a quick intro. It's always helpful to understand just, everybody's roles, right? So, just name, right, kind of role if you're interested in anything, cloud security related. Obviously, that's our strength. Please let us know. But always very helpful to understand the audience that we're speaking with.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got time. This is a small enough audience, so if we can go around the horn.
Awesome. You want to start?
Name is James Strong. I'm Cloud Native Director here at Cantino. So I get to do interfacing with our clients. I get to help run things like this, do workshops, webinars. And right now I'm actually on project. So I'm running a project around cloud security, which is where I met Andrew. So it's been a lot of fun, and we're going to be working on implementing and integrating with Prisma Cloud. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about this stack. Go around the horn, whoever's comfortable next.
Yeah, I'll go next, and then I'll just read down the list that I see of participants, so we don't have that awkward pause. So I'm Andrew Sweet. I'm a technical sales manager here at Palo Alto Networks. So I came to Palo Alto via way of acquisition. I was with a startup called Redlock. We were focused on cloud security posture management, right? So visibility into configuration of your cloud resources, right? Founded in 2018, crazy ride. It was, we were GA for less than a year and a half before Palo scooped us up for a good chunk of money, and it was just super interesting to be on the ride, and it's one of the definitely the most interesting I've been on in my career, because I always say, like, I was in security before this, right? And security, security moves fast, right? Then I was in cloud, cloud security. Cloud moves exponentially faster. You put the two together, and you got a whirlwind. And so we have our product is called Prisma Cloud, right? After the Redlock acquisition, we acquired a company called Twistlock, which does container security, right? So then containers, all right, and I started getting introduced to DevOps, right, and started getting into that world. And you guys are lightning. It's super fast, right? So it's such an interesting space to be in. But that's a little bit of background on me. From Philly, but love Louisville. I cover it from a territory perspective. So happy to be on here and presenting. Vinay, how about you?
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. I have been at Palo Alto Networks for about, I believe, 4 years now, a little bit more. I was one of the original guys to be hired to make Palo Alto Networks cloud native. And I think maybe that's a good segue to talk about when you think about Palo Alto Networks initially. We built physical firewalls, and we were a traditional, but we were a next generation firewall vendor. But then in many ways, we played a small part in identifying that the future is cloud and the cloud native applications, which we're going to talk about now. And all this modernization that's happening, we were quick to realize that, enterprises need a trusted partner that can actually bring security in a cloud native manner in an end-to-end with a fully integrated capability. So we started with cloud visibility, cloud compliance with Redlock, then we moved to the runtime with Twistlock. Now we also have capabilities to actually shift left, because for a lot, and I'm going to talk more about this, but long story short, it's been a fantastic ride, and we're very excited to really advocate for the right posture while also providing a lot of the community as well as our customers knowledge, tools, and capabilities to really, really grapple with and get the right security posture for their applications.
Awesome. I see Doug Lane.
Hey, I'm part of a cloud operations consultancy called 42 Lines. We also do custom software dev and also have a SaaS. Both are aimed at higher ed, so online learning. That's it. Next.
James Austin.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Austin, and I'm actually a part of the Prisma Cloud team. I started about 4 months ago. Wow, time is going really fast. And this is actually my first SC job, so I'm excited to be here. My background is in Linux and DevOps. I was my last job, I was more of kind of like an AWS cloud engineer. And that's about it. Happy to be here.
Cool. Thank you. And next we have Jason Lutz.
Hi, my name is Jason Lutz, and I also work with Contino on a project as well with James. My background is really traditional security, and I did have some experience with the cloud posture management tools previous to Redlock. I believe Redlock picked up Evident.io, or Palo Alto picked up.
Yes.
Evident.io.
Yeah. Evident was the first acquisition. Yep.
And so my interests are really around governance in the cloud. Some of the things I'm focused on is DevOps, automations, integrations, and I'd say a lot of things that I really need to learn about is container security. I think that's a weakness of mine. So that's one thing I'll focus on this presentation.
Very cool. Thank you. Jyoti.
Hi, I'm Jyoti. I'm from Virginia. I'm a recent graduate student. I did my master's in information security, and currently I'm looking for a full-time job. And my background is like analyzing the compliance and evaluating the testing, and also with dealing with web application security. Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks for joining. Brittany.
Hi. Yes, my name is Brittany Coble. This is my first meeting. I've finally made one.
Yay.
Yay. I work at Apris here in Louisville, and I'm here to learn. We're switching over to a Kubernetes platform for our BI team to run extracts or ETL. So I'm basically here to learn and just kind of get a one-up on it because it's just so new to me.
Very cool. Brittany, have we met?
Probably.
I think we have. I was out on site a couple times.
Yeah. I was like before COVID.
I think we rode up in the elevator together.
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Very cool. Awesome.
Cool. Yep. We'll catch up when we back in person sometime.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
And next we got Doug Lane. We are do you, Doug?
Yeah, he already did me.
Participant thing is getting shuffled up on me. All right. Kathy.
Hi, I am from Louisville. I am just a beginner, so I don't just try to change my new career. So I'm happy to be here today.
Here to learn. That's great.
Awesome.
Part of what we're here for.
Yeah, to join for this meetup, just try to learn, but I'm just beginner, so I don't know much about the coding. Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks for coming. All right. Lauren Beckley. You out there, Lauren? Maybe you're on mute. All right. We will move to Sharisha. Sorry if I butchered that.
Yeah, it's confusing. Technically, it's supposed to be Shirish with my last name. So yeah, I'm a technical architect at Commonwealth of Kentucky in Frankfort, Kentucky. This is my first meeting here. I'm just trying to learn about Kubernetes and more into cloud computing. Looking forward to it.
Cool, good stuff. And last but not least, Thomas.
Sure. My name is Thomas Benkin. I work with James and Jason here at Contino. I'm a lead consultant. I also work on the account they're on right now, focusing on the security aspects of Azure Cloud. And Azure is where a lot of my interests lie when it comes to cloud. So I'm also here just to support the cause and learn some stuff. So
awesome, good stuff. Okay, looks like we got everybody. Awesome. Vinay, there we go. Sorry about that. Wanted to get get some context for you.
Perfect. That was great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. I see we have, our audiences all across the spectrum. So maybe this is a good slide to actually level set, right? Which is, hopefully I'm speaking to the choir, but, the cloud is modernizing the software development cycle. And what that means is there is a massive transformation that is happening to how we develop and deploy applications. This is also not something that is only technology related, but it's also encompassing people, process, and technology. So for example, if you take the waterfall method, right? I mean, the waterfall method is just very, very slow. I mean, this is Uber legacy, companies who had the luxury of developing and deploying software every 6 months, if you're lucky, adopted the waterfall. But with the need to actually move tremendously faster, they're realizing that they need to adopt more agile processes. So they're adopting agile. Now you're actually realizing that we have a lot of these monolithic applications that are so tightly coupled that it's impossible to actually benefit from a transformation to agile. So what most people are realizing is that the right posture is to actually break these monolithic services down into microservices so that you have focused teams that actually innovate at a much rapid pace. So you're completely decoupling your applications and you're also deploying them as microservices, right? So purpose-built applications that can be individually deployed, scaled, managed. And moving along, one of the biggest benefits for both the adoption of Agile, breaking up your applications into smaller chunks, decoupling, microservices deployments, is the ability to actually no longer deploy software in batch releases, but now you put in every 6 months, if you will, right? Or maybe a little bit more frequently, but now you're actually going to be deploying, dare I say, a couple of times a week, or even more aggressively, a couple to many times a day. So in order to be able to do that, you need to have a combination of adopting all of these different capabilities. And then last but not least is the realization that with all of this dynamism, with all of this agility, you need to adopt automation. So a lot of companies are adopting, and I heard Azure, right? For example, the analogy for Azure is the adoption of ARM templates, if you will, to actually have reproducible capabilities to constantly deploy infrastructure, rapidly tear them down. It's no longer pets, right? It's also deploying your infrastructure as cattle, not patching, and adopting capabilities such as Terraform. So representing all aspects of your deployments and your infrastructure and your code as code. So this is what we call as an adopting a common cloud operating model. So what does this look like? So this is a very, very typical cloud native deployment pipeline, which is very, very broadly speaking has been agreed upon from a community perspective that there is a build phase, there's a deploy phase, and the run phase. So in the build phase, this is where the developer is actually developing the custom application, generating the Docker file in order to actually represent all aspects of the deployment as a container and packaging all that code into a container. You have DevOps teams that are actually deploying and representing all aspects of your infrastructures, whether it's on Kubernetes or some kind of a container orchestration and runtime, or whether it's in the cloud as infrastructure as code. And all of this is now stored in a source code management system. So then we actually kick off a build. So the build pipeline goes in, it goes and retrieves all the different packages, whether it's NPM packages, whether it's Python packages, whether you're deploying in developing in Go, what have you. So you deploy all of these packages, and then you go through a build process that actually ends up building the container image. Now this container image is now typically stored in a registry. So it's once again, then now you move into the deploy phase. In the deploy phase, the code is also thoroughly tested. Let's say you run your unit system integration tests on an actual, we go from your dev environment to your test environment. You go through all your different types of testing, SAST, DAST, runtime, etc. And then the final step is when you're happy with everything, everything looks good, you actually use all these capabilities such as infrastructure as code and representing all aspects of your application deployment as, let's say, Kubernetes application manifest, and then you deploy all of this code in the runtime. Now, it's not the case that everybody is using containers, right? I think the application stack, as we talk about it today, it's heterogeneous, and what that means is some aspects of your applications might be deployed on virtual machines, some aspects of the application might be deployed on containers, and yet further some other applications deployed on serverless platform. So this, in essence, constitutes the entire cloud native deployment pipeline, which facilitates the DevOps workflows. It's all about agility and getting code to run in your production environments much faster. Now, it's unfortunately not everything is rosy, right? So with all this cloud innovation, comes a whole bunch of security challenges. So a research that was done by our Unit 42 research team at Palo Alto Networks and Prisma Cloud found that we talked about automation and representing a lot of our infrastructure as code, which is CloudFormation templates, ARM templates, or Terraform templates. We found that 42% of CloudFormation templates are insecure. So there are a whole bunch, and somebody also mentioned compliance. So there are a whole slew of best practices compliance standards that mandate that there are certain particular specific configurations and controls that need to be applied in order to maintain security. But we found out that 42% of these are insecure. Secondly, with the advent of Docker and the dramatic adoption of containers and open source technology, we found that 51% of Docker containers are using insecure defaults. And this is where I want to provide my developer hat. So I've been a developer myself, and I built some very, very large scale distributed systems. I built cloud platforms, you name it. And as a developer, my first instinct is to actually, meet the functional requirements, make sure it's sufficiently tested, but security is always an afterthought. We're trying to meet all these very unrealistic deadlines. So even as a security practitioner myself, security, when I was developing applications, security was always an afterthought. So you can see how, insecure defaults and configurations and other vulnerabilities can sneak into our code and make its way into production. And then finally, even from an enterprise perspective, what we have found is a lot of our customers struggle with compliance. There is not a single place where you'll find that, here are the 42 compliance configurations that you need to apply to be either GDPR compliant or HIPAA compliant or PCI compliant, if you will. So these are a whole slew of challenges, and it's already becoming very, very daunting. So let's now apply a lot, and let's try to make a mind map of all these threat vectors for cloud native application. So we talked about it, right? So we have insecure defaults that are sneaking into our Docker files. We have insecure configurations. For example, let's say you're deploying on AWS or Azure or GCP. There are many compliance standards that mandate that your database clusters should never be exposed to the internet, or these database clusters should always be encrypted, that private key should be stored in an HSM, etc. So there are so many different compliance controls, and it's just not reasonable to have a developer have awareness, knowledge, and the appetite when they're developing applications to fix it. Therefore, we get a lot of vulnerabilities, exploits, and ultimately breaches. Another threat vector for these is the package repos. So often we find a shiny new package that actually satisfies a whole bunch of needs for our application. We include it in our Docker file, it makes its way into production and it's deployed. It's another exploit vector. So similarly, all of this gets now packaged. It's in your registry. It's sitting as an image in your registry. You're not doing security testing. So your security debt constantly keeps rising, and we'll talk about the benefits and the cons of not doing security testing in your CI/CD pipeline. But then now you're also representing your applications. There are some NIST 800-190 special publication calls for very, very specific security controls for your containers and containerized applications. But it's very, very hard for developers to know all aspects of this. Therefore, they don't have the right configurations. It manifests itself in the manifest, if you will, forgive the pun. And then once again, you deploy these applications in your runtime and you're susceptible to exploits. So all the red boxes that you see on the right are your serverless applications end up having vulnerabilities. You don't know what accesses are happening. You don't know what packages. So there are massive blind spots because and as a result of this agility, all brought about through agility, because now we're highly dynamic, we are massively scalable, we're deploying so many different applications at a high frequency. So where is security? We haven't talked about security, which then leads to that problem where now DevOps and security can't see eye to eye. I just want to make sure I'm staying in time. So these are all huge problems. And then in the worst case, you're going to, in the best case, you're hoping that you're not breached, but it's not a question of if, but it's a question of when. So what is needed is a truly integrated and a comprehensive approach is required to secure this highly dynamic cloud native deployment paradigm, cloud native applications, and it needs cloud native security. So what does that really, really mean? So what that means is you need protection across your entire development lifecycle. It is not an afterthought. It's no longer the case that we're developing applications, it goes to a security team, 3-4 weeks later, they come back with scans that are done and tell you, you need to fix this. And there's absolutely no appetite. It's a recipe for disaster. And when DevOps teams need to move so fast, security needs to be embedded into your entire application lifecycle throughout the build, deploy, and run phases. So it cannot be an afterthought. In my previous slide, I alluded to the fact that, how often do we hear this thing where DevOps teams are just fearful of the security team because they come up with all of these unrealistic requirements to say, hey, you need to go fix this. And the security teams have more often than not visibility into this only in the runtime. And by then it's literally too late, right? So there is this mistrust. I mean, security doesn't trust DevOps to understand security. And then DevOps doesn't believe that security understands how they need to be agile and consume capabilities. So releasing software faster cannot mean shortcuts on security. So we need to improve that posture where security is providing DevOps teams and empowering them to take responsibility for security by giving them the right tools. We can't expect DevOps to be security experts, but then we want to enable them through native agile and DevOps processes to provide the capability to embed this kind of security. And lastly, change is the only constant in these clouds, where every single day, Azure, GCP, AWS, you name it, they're coming up with new services and capabilities, and each needs to be configured very, very specifically. I mean, you'll hear this all the time where the security in the cloud is a shared responsibility. And oftentimes people implicitly assume that deploying applications in the cloud is secure because AWS and Azure and GCP have thousands of security engineers. You're absolutely right. They secure, they secure the cloud, but security in the cloud is the responsibility of the user or the customer. So imagine you have virtual machine workloads, you have container workloads on Kubernetes, EKS, AKS, GKE, and you also are using serverless platforms. So you can't use the 3 different tools because it's a nightmare. You have no correlation. So you need a uniform tool set that provides all of these different runtime capabilities across the entire stack. I talk about VMs, containers, and serverless workloads as the application stack. So only by applying this kind of a posture can you rest assured that you have comprehensive security across for all your cloud native applications that could be running critical applications. So with that, as you can see, I've spent literally 2 or 3 minutes talking about a very, very complex environment. It's a highly dynamic environment, but we thought about how can we make this actionable and operationalizable for our customers, for our users, and also just talking about what that right posture looks like. And which is what led us to develop this concept of the cloud security automation stack. And so let's start at the bottom, right, which is the infrastructure layer. So the concepts that I'd like to talk about here is, you need readily available blueprints that are being validated that all the different application teams in your DevOps teams can just run. For example, you can just be able to run your Terraform templates that bring up complex architectures, which I'll maybe show in another slide, in a matter of minutes, right? And not having, and if these have to be completely automated, manual processes are a recipe for disaster. So you completely automate your deployment of Kubernetes, configuring your Kubernetes, the Kubernetes orchestrators to make sure that they are adhering to best practices, and then across all multiple cloud, multi-cloud architectures, right? Whether it's on Oracle Cloud or GCP, Azure, what have you, and you're anywhere representing, and Kubernetes is the great normalizer. So now all your applications and microservices are represented as Kubernetes application manifest. So all of your entire infrastructure is now represented as code. You can reason about it. It's stored in a source code management system. So you can apply the same rigor that was hereto thereof applied only to software, right? So once you've deployed your application, now you need to think about your security. So let's think about the security layer. So at Palo Alto and at Prisma Cloud, we want to automate everything. So providing APIs, tools, capabilities, and with all the necessary integrations for all the popular tools that DevOps teams want to use and leverage. So we were the first vendor to provide the Terraform provider for security as code. So now just as you deploy all your architectures and infrastructure on all these cloud platforms as code, now you can also specify all your security policies as code. And you can, by click of a button, you can add an additional CI/CD step where once your deployment is complete, you can apply your security from that perspective. Then secondly, also you want to automate all aspects of your DevSecOps process. So which involves, I talked about the dramatic increase in the leverage of infrastructure as code and all the misconfigurations that are coming thereof. Now, guess what? If I can actually scan those infrastructures as I'm developing, And even better, and also in addition, now scan it in an additional CI/CD step. So we provide all of these capabilities with our Twist CLI scanning capabilities, where you can just scan all your container images in your registry, and you can even have a very simple policy that says, hey, if I detect a vulnerability with a critical critical threshold of severity of critical, I definitely don't want that image to be deployed in my runtime. So you can have these policies. So now you're moving security in. This is what shift left is all about. You're moving security into the CI/CD pipeline, catching all these issues, identifying them, fixing it. And then a very, very key aspect of this is developers. We as developers have a much greater appetite to fix things when we're working on it. It's shiny, hey, I have a lot of pride, I want to fix it. Rather than the security team coming and telling me 2 weeks later when I've already moved on to my next feature potentially. So but I want to fix it. So catching it in the application development and deployment process is incredibly valuable. And we have the ability to do that in the CI/CD pipeline, in the IDE integrations that I'm going to potentially show you in a demo, hopefully soon. And then compliance. Right? So there are a whole slew of compliance standards. So with Prisma Cloud, you just point and shoot, and then we can scan your entire infrastructure for compliance controls for, let's say, NIST, the container security specific controls, your HIPAA controls, GDPR, CCPA, and a whole bunch of different compliance standards. You can actually have full visibility, assess the posture by a click of a button. And now you can also apply similar compliance controls in your CI/CD pipeline. And then last but definitely not least, we have very, very deep integrations in the runtime to actually build automatic models. Now we talked about large scale. So you can't really be babysitting any of these workloads. You need automated capabilities where you can build models for each of your custom applications. So if there's any deviation and any abnormal behaviors for your applications, these are immediately alerted and potentially remediated. So another example, for example, is if your applications are actually reaching out to some kind of a malicious domain or a command and control center, that network connection is automatically detected and dropped. So you have out-of-the-box capabilities for runtime protection, which I characterize as process, network, and file integrity management capabilities. So now you can deploy all of these capabilities in a highly automated manner. And then last but not least, because I want to move very quickly and I want to quickly show you a demo, is once you've deployed all of these capabilities, the threat actors are constantly evolving themselves as well. So you want to automate all aspects of your operations layer as well, where you want to be able to apply new threat intel feeds from different threat intel providers and make it actionable in your different environments. So for example, an Amazon Guard Duty or Security Hub, Prisma Cloud Compute also has its own threat feeds that we index and make actionable. So you have all of these different capabilities and that can be deployed in a fully automated manner. And just want to also finish the story with once you have these capabilities, SOC teams are often, now you have the visibility, you've done well, you have full visibility, you have all these protections, but you're also inundated with a whole bunch of alerts. So Prisma Cloud now can actually surface all of these high fidelity alerts, and you can use automated remediation capabilities to actually remediate a lot of these different alerts, and only leaving those alerts that need manual intervention for the SOC teams to address. So it provides depth and breadth and a better efficiency operationalization for all your DevOps teams, your security teams, as well as your SOC analysts. So with that, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you did all of these capabilities that I talked about, now you're actually applying security, you're scanning your infrastructure as code, you're scanning your images, you're fixing all of those issues. You have a single place where you deploy the policy, you have better security across the entire infrastructure, and this is completely defense in depth, and you can rest assured that your critical applications are appropriately secured. a very, very powerful use case that I alluded to, where now we want to meet the developers where they are. They're not security experts, but now when they make a check-in, for example, we can actually trigger to run all our compliance checks and all our image validation checks for vulnerabilities, etc., and actually fail a build if it doesn't comply with your security team's policy. So now you see how the right posture is decentralization, allowing DevOps to actually own responsibility. And now the DevOps guy, and let me wear the DevOps guy hat, say, hey, I know what went wrong. I know why it went wrong. And now I also know how to fix it. So I have an appetite to fix it. I want to fix it because the last thing that I want is for my code to be breached and exploited and so on. So you can meet the DevOps and the developer where they are in the pull request phase, if you will. But then now you can also go through in your source code management system and now say, okay, I built my image. Now I want to make sure I scan my image. I've got a small picture here which shows you how it gives you a full attestation of all the vulnerabilities so that you can now script your security policies to ensure that this particular instance has 5 or 6 critical vulnerabilities. I mean, that's a bad thing. So you definitely don't want that image to be deployed into your runtime. So you want to make sure that's addressed. And then last thing that I want to leave you with here is it's not a binary, it's not a single event. It's a process of continuous improvement. I mean, that's what truly DevSecOps is, where security is enabling your DevOps teams knows what to do, but you identify, respond, detect, and adapt. It's a process of continuous improvement. And as I talked about it, you can scan your infrastructure as code. You can scan all your application manifests. You know, now with reasoning about your code, about your security policies as code, gives security teams the ability to now move at the speed of DevOps. Everything gets checked in. For example, you go through your approval process, push it into GitHub. Maybe there is a new step in a Jenkins or a Circle CI or some CI/CD pipeline that actually deploys your security policies. It's fully automated. And then I talked about the automated remediation capabilities of Prisma Cloud, where we can surface high fidelity indicators of compromise, which is then ingested by our Cortex data lake. And then you have automated remediation for, let's say, 85%. And it's incredibly beneficial for SOC teams to leverage this kind of a posture. So I don't know. I think I've raced through that, and my apologies. I know we were, but if I had one more minute, I just want to quickly show you this in action. So if I may, it will just take another minute. Let me see if I can do this.
Yeah, Vinay, if that product can do all of that, you're gonna work me out of a job, because we implement that, all of those pieces that you just talked about. We work with clients on implementing that. So it'll be interesting to see that work in an entire one product suite, and have one pane of glass to see all the security issues happening inside of a pipeline. So I'm excited to see this working.
Yeah, no, so just to give you a look-see, right? So I talked about the fact that you can do this in the Twist CLI using our binary. And given that it's a binary, you just provide the username, password, and our console information. You can see how you can implement it and just throw it into your CI/CD platform of choice. Whatever platform of choice, now it'll go fetch the policies, apply the policies. So if you can see here, I have a dirty cow image. I think it's a very, it's known to be a very infected image. So I'm just going to apply the Twist CLI on this particular image. If I run it, it's performing the scan right now, and you can see, I hope the demo gods are with me. Yep, they are with me. But oh, sorry about that. Now you can see how you have full visibility into all the packages, all the CVEs, all the severities, and you also identify the fact that, hey, this has a high severity vulnerability, where this is what I talked about, where the NIST 800-190 or the NIST CSF compliance standards, then this image should never be created as this image should be created with a non-root user. It's got a root user. So we have the ability to scan all your images. So this is just a quick view into how you can actually operationalize this. And then I wanted to actually show you how you can actually detect all your compliance misconfigurations in the IDE, but I want to give Andrew some time because he's got some very exciting stuff that he wants to talk about from our cloud security report. But if anybody has any questions, more than happy to please contact us, get in touch with us, and we can happy to drill deeper. Thank you so much. That was a whirlwind one there. Sorry about that.
No, that was a lot in a very short amount of time, and there's lots of moving pieces that are involved. So it's always good to see a demo, and I'm sure there's lots more out there on the Palo Alto website. So yeah, and with that, let's see what Andrew's got for us.
Yeah, let me turn video back on here. Yeah, thanks, guys. So, James, you made an interesting comment when you're like, "Hey, I'm going to be out of a job, right? If the technology does all that," and you would be spot on if people, if it was one team, right, that knew how to leverage it, right, and had a expertise in security and DevOps, right, and operations, and was able to merge everything together, and that is never the case. So you have a ton of job security over the next few years, and I go out, right, I live and breathe cloud security, right, have for the past 3.5 years, and I've talked to companies from under 500 employees to Fortune 10 companies, and everybody struggles with it's to me, there's the technology aspect of it, but in the cloud security world, it is absolutely equally, if not maybe even more, a people and process thing, right? You can have all the bells and whistles, right? I've been to a bunch of companies, right, that have hundreds of different technologies. When I go out to customers, I mean, what the product, right, Prisma Cloud, as we continue to build it, right, we started with purely configuration monitoring, right? Then I mentioned this earlier, right? Then we moved to Twistlock because we essentially looked at the market. So this was about 2020, it was founded in 2018, right? And it was the hot, it was the hot topic, right? Monitoring your configuration. And then, a year later, literally just a year later, we looked at the market, and I was competing against Redlock, and at the time, or I was with Redlock competing against Twistlock, right? And I would go into customers, and so we would basically be competing both for cloud security business, but the budget they had would either go to container security, or it would go to CSPM, configure, monitoring of your cloud resources. So, Palo had the wherewithal, right, to go out, and we tried to develop internally a tool, and put a bunch of resources at it, and realized that if we wanted to have the best tool on the market, right, we had to go out and bring them in-house, right? We had to go out and buy them, because in the cloud world, it moves so fast, and time to market is so important, right, that if you try to build something, right, you're going to be behind in 6 months. So we brought those guys in, right, and then we had configuration monitoring, we had runtime defense for containers, right, serverless. And then, the progression, right, we're staying, trendy, if you will, right, but trying to look into the future. And, serverless started popping up, and we're seeing it a little bit more, right? But when I'm talking to customers, I see serverless today where containers were 2 years ago, right? It's a hot topic of conversation, not a ton in deployment yet, or in production. I think that'll change in 2 years, right? It'll be much more to scale. There's not a ton of expertise out there on it yet. And then, and now we very much have a focus on shift left, right? Bringing security and automating it into the pipeline, which is, certainly of interest to everybody on the phone, right? And then, developers, right? The DevOps teams, they really start getting involved. And now we're talking to application owners. So, long-winded kind of a way to say, that kind of proves the point, right? A tool, when you get into the cloud, right, now you're taking traditionally disparate teams, putting them together, right, and having them work together, right? And you guys know better than I do, being DevOps, right? There's the traditional view, right, is it's not a good relationship, right? It's security slows down DevOps guys, right, and girls, right? DevOps is tasked with moving at lightning speed, getting the product to market as quickly as possible, and have timelines that they're paid to meet, right? And security slow that down. And now it is more important than ever to have security in mind, right? And I'll tell you, DevOps guys, right, are not security guys. Security guys are not DevOps guys. And there is a, you know,
I had this conversation with Jason just earlier today. Jason's like, I'm not a developer, I'm a security guy. And I was like, that's okay. That's
right.
what you're here for security, I'm here for development, and we're here to work together and get that common knowledge and common, you know, vernacular together. So
yeah, I mean, I always joke that, you know, half of my job is playing a marriage counselor, because getting the trust, I mean, it's a thing. Like, you have to, it's not there, and it takes time. One of the things I've seen be successful at customers, and I always recommend it and preach it wherever I go, is creating a cloud center of excellence, right? And it
Yep.
has, you know, Jason, you and I, you know, project we share, you know, that they've done that, right? It's been very successful. And I preach that because, you know, if you can do that, essentially what it is, right? It's, there's a lot of variations, but the basis of it is, you know, a lead, right? Or a person that is designated to represent that section of the business, right? So there's usually somebody from the dev team, right? There's usually application owners. There's usually compliance, right? GRC, and operations, right? Sometimes network.
Yep.
And it's important because, again, you need that expertise from all those backgrounds, but you need, at the same time, you have to have somebody that's leading it, right? And too many cooks in the kitchen is not a good thing, right? A lot of opinions. So, you know, if you have something like that, and if it's not formalized, but at least you have it conceptually, it's a much more effective process, because one of the challenges is security guys, right? When they hear developers say no or resist it, they you know, they walk away, they get frustrated, but they don't ask the questions, right? They don't say why, right? What's out there? How can we help you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a natural, and the same thing on you know, developers as security guy. Why can't I do that, right? And security guys are like, because I said so, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's
we see that a lot when we're working with clients.
Gotta go away.
So we got a few minutes to 6. You had a report that you wanted to share and show?
I did. So let me share the link to this. So let me share my screen.
I could talk about Cloud Center of Excellences and security and just getting everybody to talk together. That's a big part of what I do. As he's pulling that up, does anybody have any questions for Vinay before he has to leave?
Okay, can you guys see this?
Yep, I see the Cloud Native Security Report for 2020.
Yeah, perfect. So that is the internal site. So I'm not going to give you guys that because you can't get there. I'm going to paste this in the chat window.
I'll get that posted out to the Zoom or to the meetup.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to just post it here in the chat so everybody that's here can access it. So this is a fantastic resource. I'm super excited about it, and you know, of course, I'm slightly biased, right? But it's impressive what you know the Palo has done here. So it's a combined effort between Accenture, Palo Alto Networks, a lot of customers, all the CSPs, right? AWS, Google, GCP. You know, it's a survey of 3,000 people, 3,000 cloud experts, right? They're all SMEs, and just a ton of very good, very relevant, and the latest and greatest data that's out there, right? So what I like about this is if you go to this website, it's not just a report, right? The report's strong, and I'll go over some of those interesting statistics in just a minute here. But it's a pool of resources, right? So there's the report that's just got a ton of really great data in it. There's, you can look at just the, the questions we asked, right? The what responses were. You can look at just the data aspect of it, right? You can see just industry stats, right? Not from the survey, but from customers of both Palo and Accenture and end users that we pulled this from. And there's a ton of data that you can get from this, and everything's recorded online. So it was really designed to be a resource right? It's not a sales thing. It's a resource to educate the market, right, on cloud security, and just bring a bunch of expertise and consolidate it into a single place. So definitely get that, check that out. You do have to put in your email address. No way around that. But let me share what some of these statistics are. I think they're pretty compelling here.
Andrew, sorry, excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah,
I have a 3 o'clock. Well, I had got a drop, but thank you so much for having me, and happy to have more discussions as necessary.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking today. Have a nice rest of the afternoon, Vinay. Bye.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vinay. Yeah, I'll just take 2 minutes. I'm not going to go through this whole deck here, but I just want to cover some of the interesting things here. So, this one is really, really interesting to me, right? Because, it just solidifies, right? Cloud is already taking over the world, but, this is saying that of the enterprise that are using cloud today, right, 46% have their workloads they now run 46, almost half of the workloads in the cloud, right? 2 years ago, this was half that. And over the next 24 months, it expects to be 64%, right? So just, continuing to move to the cloud. COVID has increased that, right, from what we're seeing. This one still continues to ring true. This number goes up every time I see it. The last stat I saw around this was 90%. Now it's 94% of organizations that consume the cloud consume multi-cloud, right? 60% of them use between 2 and 5 platforms. And every customer or prospect that I talk to, I say, first question is, hey, what clouds are you in, right? What CSPs do you use? And it's always, one main one, and usually a second, not as significant one, but they're like, but we have to be ready for, right? If they're AWS and Azure, they say, hey, we got to be ready for GCP, or this is coming down the pike, or this might come down the pike. It's very rarely just, one cloud anymore. So, kind of the multi-compute world, right? The interesting piece about this is, when they did the survey, right, there was no significant leader in the type of compute that was being consumed in the cloud, right? So, I don't need to read the statistics, you guys can read, but interest, very, very even, right, kind of percentage of how people consume the cloud, and there was no real, push one way or the other, which I thought was pretty interesting. Customers continue to evolve. So, what that means is that, kind of what I said before, right? It's, we started, right, doing configuration monitoring, right? Then containers were a hot topic, but not in production. Now containers are in production at scale, and serverless is there, right? So just really, interesting. It moves so quickly, right?
That one doesn't surprise me.
This one, yeah. Oh, it's
you go in and you see, every manner in these enterprises where you still have people just hand rolling VMs to, you have some teams just, everything is completely serverless. So it's, depending on the team's pace, they're all over the place.
Yeah, I've even been in, I can think of a couple, couple companies off the top of my head that I went in there. Usually the progression when you talk to a customer, right, depending on where they are in the cloud maturity journey, is IaaS, PaaS, starts with SaaS, right, then IaaS, PaaS, then the containers, then serverless. I've talked to companies that are like, yeah, we're getting into the cloud. I go, oh, great. So you're going, what are you doing, lifting and shifting IaaS, PaaS? They go, nope, we're going right into serverless. I'm like, oh, interesting. We got to keep chunking here, right? The top 3 challenges moving workloads to the cloud. There's just complexity, compliance. Compliance is very difficult in the cloud, and comprehensive security, because especially when you go into the multi-cloud world, you're introducing so many tools, right? If you're using AWS, you're consuming their tools, right? CloudTrail, your GuardDuty, Macy. Then you move into Azure. If you had your AWS game up, right, you may know cloud, but now you have to learn a whole different tool set and manage a whole different tool set. This one's also pretty interesting, and these are just the top cloud security concerns, right, from our respondents. So I won't read them all, right, but you guys can scroll, kind of scan through this here. But the interesting piece here, right, is these are all easily solvable problems if you have the right tool sets to do it, right, and if you have the skills to do it. Again, some of the top challenges, really to me, it all starts with visibility. If you don't, the old security adage is, if you can't see it, you can't secure it. And that could not be more true in the cloud. I've gone into companies that, they thought they had, a good example, they thought they had 5,000 EC2 resources in their environment, and about 150 or 200 GCP compute engines. Turns out when we got into production, I tried to keep getting them to onboard their GCP environment at the org level, right? So you can see everything. They had over 1,000 compute resources in GCP, and they had no idea about it. So,
that's not surprising.
No. It's just the cloud shared responsibility model for the cloud. So, this is what security guys look at, right? This is what they need to know. And essentially, I'm sure you guys have seen this before, but right, this up here is what the end user, right, what the consumer of the cloud is responsible for, and this is what the cloud service provider is responsible for. And this model, there should be different versions of this model, right, because that shifts depending what service you're using, right? If you're using a serverless technology, right, 90% of this shifts to the cloud provider, and the org is not responsible for things like the network, right, and things like that. That's all managed by the cloud service providers.
Yep.
On that last slide, just out of curiosity, do you have a rough estimate of how many of your customers are actually on Alibaba Cloud that are using Prisma? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so very few that are U.S. customers. We're all over the globe. But why we did it is, the challenge with China is first and foremost, the Great Firewall of China, right? If you're going to use the cloud in China, you have to do what China tells you to do. You have no choice. And customers that are, multinational businesses that need or want to do business in China, AWS China is good, right? But they're very much handcuffed because, obviously, right, the dictatorship over there, they control everything, right? They handcuff AWS, they handcuff every CSP in there except for Alibaba and Tencent, right? They let them, they let them do what they want to do, right? And if you're a US company or any company outside of China, right, and you want to do cloud business in China, you got to do it on their by their rules, right, and with their providers, or it's a very small subset of what you can do outside of China.
Cool, thank you.
But anybody that's using it has significant challenges there. So we developed it, right, because we have a presence in APAC, right? So it made sense for us. But like I said, every U.S. business has a challenge with it. At least we can give them visibility into what's going on. And this is some of the interesting stuff, right? I don't need to kind of run through the rest of the deck here. But hopefully that was helpful. We appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys. Anybody have any questions?
This is Jason. I have a question. So the whole DevOps versus security guys, yeah, I'm learning a lot working with James and the crew. I understand the CSPM piece 100%, doing CIS benchmarks, different policies, what the things that, the CSPMs are looking for. On the twist lock piece, I'd say I struggle. So I guess my question maybe for other people there, if we were trying to seek training on that, I'm sure that enterprise customers have certain resources. How about people that are not enterprise customers that want to get training on what they should be looking for in container security?
Was that directed to me?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's just a ton of resources that are out there, at least on Palo's site, in terms of our product set. We have we've tried to develop data, right, and resources that are more agnostic. But we have a lot of free resources, right? You don't have to be a Palo customer to leverage them. It's one of the great things that I like about that site. Like we have a container security 101, right? So if you want to kind of learn the ins and outs of it, you can do that. And you can actually download that through the, actually, I don't know if you can download it through there. If you want to copy that, hit me up or hit up James or Jason. We can get you a copy of that. But that's one of the reasons why we developed this, right? Is to just help educate, the broader community. And there's, if you go to livepaloalto.com, it's a live community, right? With people posting, asking questions and just sharing knowledge.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I have some courses on Quick Lab, just to mention that. I've gone through those. Those are pretty cool.
I'll post the live link, and Andrew, if you don't mind, I'll post your email address if anyone feels like following up with you. I'll put your email address on the meetup board.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. All right. I feel like people have dropped off. Do we have any more questions before we let Andrew go? No? All right. Well, Andrew, thank you for working with me on getting this together. I will get this up there to our YouTube page, and I'll get you the link to that. So thanks again, and thanks everyone for coming.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.